What is a buy-to-let mortgage? How much does a buy-to-let mortgage cost? Can you get a buy-to-let mortgage as a first-time buyer? And should I buy for a limited company? These are questions that we get asked a lot as mortgage brokers helping buy-to-let investors. In this video, we're going to break down the ultimate guide to buy-to-let mortgages. So what exactly is a buy-to-let mortgage and how do they work? So a buy-to-let mortgage is a particular mortgage that's set up specifically for people to buy properties and rent them out for a profit. The terminology and also the criteria is completely different to a residential mortgage. Whereas a lot of the residential mortgages are based around your own personal affordability and income, a lot of the buy-to-let mortgages, although you do need to have income there with a lot of lenders, are based on the rental income from the property, and if the rental income will more than cover the mortgage payments that you're going to pay. So how is a personal buy-to-let mortgage different to a limited company buy-to-let mortgage? And we're not tax advisors, so we can't give you tax advice. It's always worth speaking to a professional in regards to that. However, a lot of investors are setting up for the limited company because due to Section 24, so Section 24 means landlords in their own personal name cannot offset mortgage payments as an expense against your profits. So for example, if you've got rental income of £1,000 and your mortgage payment is £600, you'd still pay tax on the full £1,000. However, as a limited company mortgage, if you had £1,000 rental income and £600 mortgage payment, you'd only then pay tax on that £400 minus other expenses. And again, I need to reiterate, we're not tax advisors, so you need to speak to somebody individually to get personal advice about your tax. And buying under a limited company, although there are some benefits, is not always for everybody. This is why you need to speak to somebody to give you personal tax advice before you start on your property journey to see which would be the best way to get set up. And need to think about this a bit more longer term, not just which will benefit you now. Depending on how your lifestyle and your income may be in the future, you may want to get it set up now, the best possible way to benefit later on down the line. Because for example, if you was to buy a property now in your personal name and then decide later on down the line that you'd like to transfer that over to your limited company, you can't just transfer it over without any cost. You actually have to sell the property from yourself to the limited company that you own. When you're a first time buyer and you're applying for a buy-to-let mortgage, if you're borrowing $150,000, not only do they want to see that the rental income stacks up, but they also want to make sure that you can afford it yourself in your own personal name, just to show you're not doing a backdoor buy-to-let and buying a buy-to-let to live in yourself. So how much do you need as a deposit when you're buying your first buy-to-let property? This varies depending on the lender, and there are lenders out there that can do it as low as 20%. However, the rental income needs to be more than enough to cover the mortgage payment. And the second you start using the 80% loan to value products, the interest rates jump through the roof because there's not as much competition there. When you get yourself a 25% deposit, it opens the doorway up to the majority of lenders, and it then puts you in a position where you can look for cheaper rates compared to just having that 20% deposit. So how much can you borrow on a buy-to-let mortgage? So every lender has different stress tests, and the stress test is making sure that not only does the rental income cover your mortgage payments now, but also if the interest rates were to increase, is there still enough profit there for you to make money and not put yourself in a position where you can't pay the mortgage from the rent? So this is where, when you're looking at properties and you're looking at going down the buy-to-let route, it's good to have a good relationship with your mortgage broker, that you can ping property details over to them and they can work out if the rental income stacks up and if you can borrow the money you need to be able to buy that property. So how much does a buy-to-let property cost? So what are the fees involved when you're buying a buy-to-let property? Exactly the same as when you are buying a normal property, you still have your stamp duty to pay. However, there's an extra 3% surcharge on top of the stamp duty that you would usually pay. So for example, if you're in the threshold where you're paying 0% stamp duty, it would be 3%. If you're in the threshold where you're paying 5% stamp duty, you'd be charged 8%. So the stamp duty costs are more expensive when you're looking at going down the buy-to-let route. The product fees are also more expensive. Whereas your standard product fee for a residential mortgage is $999, a lot of buy-to-let lenders will do a percentage of this, especially if you're going down the limited company route. So although there are some lenders with no product fees on $999, when you go down the limited company route, and even some buy-to-let lenders in your own personal name can charge you anything from 1% to 3% off how much the mortgage balance is, which can be quite expensive if you're looking at buying bigger value properties. Throughout the process, you would also need a good solicitor, and if you're buying for an auction property, as a lot of buy-to-let investors do because you can get better deals, you need to make sure that the solicitor that you're dealing with specialises in auction properties and can act promptly to be able to get the deal over the line. Especially if you're looking at buying properties below market value and a lot cheaper, sometimes people would rather deal with speed than getting the extra amount for their property. So having someone on your team that can act quickly for your mortgage and your conveyancing will make the process a lot easier and potentially allow you to get better deals over someone that's going to be a bit longer. So is it illegal to live in your buy-to-let mortgage? Although it's not illegal as such, it is frowned upon by a lot of lenders. However, if you've rented the property out for a few years and due to circumstances unforeseen for yourself, you now need to move back into the property, you may be in a position where if you get consent from the lender, they may allow you to live in there. However, if they don't, you then need to turn it back to a standard residential mortgage. So should I get an interest only or a repayment mortgage when I'm getting a buy-to-let? This massively depends on your personal situation, and this is why you need to have conversations with the mortgage advisor as you're going through the process. So the benefits of an interest-only mortgage is that if you're buying property solely for cash flow to replace your income, every single month your mortgage payments are lower and your rental income will be at a level where you'll be able to generate a profit, pay your mortgage and still have money in your pocket. On top of that as well, due to inflation, if you had a mortgage of £100,000 today, £100,000 in 25 years is not going to be the same value. So as time goes on, inflation gradually eats away from that and it makes it easier to pay it off in 25 years than it would do now. Good example for this is look back 25 years ago, a mortgage that would have been £25,000 to £30,000 then would have been a big mortgage, whereas now it's a lot easier to pay off. The benefit of a repayment mortgage is that at the end of the term, you know, it's fully paid off and you own a property that you no longer have any mortgage on. But the downside to it, so you're paying a lot more on a month-to-month basis. So as your rental income comes in, there's not as much profit there for you. So if you have any emergencies, new boiler, people not paying, not only have you got to pay your own residential mortgage, but you've got more money to pay for the people that aren't paying because the payments are a lot higher. So how many buy-to-let properties can I own? This massively changes depending on the lender that you speak to. So some lenders class you as a portfolio landlord, anything over 3 or 4 properties. And when you get over 3 or 4 properties, the way they assess your buy-to-let application is a lot different compared to having the 1 or 2. The main reason this is not only do they look at the individual property to make sure that it's profitable, they look at the entire portfolio just to make sure that the income from the portfolio is actually enough to cover the mortgage payments from the entire portfolio. However, there's no limited amount of buy-to-let properties that you can have, but as you start buying more and more, the lenders that you've got will start to dwindle, and then you end up dealing with specialty lenders that do not have a limit on how many buy-to-let properties that you can own. My name's Anthony from Bulk Mortgages, and this has been the ultimate guide to buy-to-let mortgages. If you have any other questions, don't forget to leave comments and we can answer any comments that you've got.